have at least pitted away and the sun should come up, but we'll see, but we're not 100% perfect, but we try. Today, we'll be looking at three major topic sessions that we're going to be talking about, the logistics of drone delivery and then the UTM services. Oh, by the way, please, when you get your break, just walk to the lovely garden there as you go to see the drones fly, and then stop at the UTM desk and find out more information about what's happening in terms of the world of UTMs. So it'd be nice if you could do that, just so that we can share, learn a few things. And I feel we've been skipping that, and that's a very important component of in the delivery of drone services, especially if you want the regulators to be part of the whole process. So it'll be nice if we were able to stop by there and just check out and see what is new in the world of UTMs. And the last session, of course, is infrastructure. And there's supposed to be a boat ride that goes out to the island, I think for some of us. So that would be fantastic. So without further delay then, we're going to start the first session on logistics of drone delivery. And that is going to be moderated by Captain Clifford. We call him Cliff in short. Sweetie. Wow. There's an E at the end, not a Y. Yeah? He is an aviation officer and global lead for WFP's RPA's initiative. Cliff brings an airline and remote pilot's operational background, along with the technical experience of a former FAA aviation safety inspector and the ICAO, or ICAO, however you pronounce it, technical officer, to our program today to discuss the use of RPAs in humanitarian air cargo operations. Cliff, Captain. And for today, I can promote you to Major, Cliff, but then the others, Karibu sana.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. If there's a precision, you point this at
No,
that one.
yeah.
We're just going to speak. Okay, fine. No problem.
Good morning, everyone. I'd like to thank our Tanzanian hosts and all government officials, and also government officials from our neighboring states. Today, we're here to consider adding a new element to a long line of supply chain solutions, back from animal caravans, canoes on the water, steamships, modern ships, rail, trucks, and most recently joining the group are aviation, from initial mail carriers and biplanes to larger fleets now like UPS, FedEx, and DHL, who is actually modeling here. The initial uses of civil commercial UAS were surveillance-based. But with the entry of drones into cargo delivery marketplace, logistic and supply chain developers such as DHL and UPS have studied how they can leverage and scale these new tools into their multimodal transportation systems. Today, our speakers are going to discuss their vision on how drones can be integrated into routine and emergency logistics. So today, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Mr. Olivier Defoe is a senior manager of Village Reach. Olivier has more than 15 years' experience in global health solutions in Haiti and West Africa. He leads the design and implementation of a portfolio of health innovations to improve healthcare delivery at the last mile with expertise in supply chain, digital health, and clinical laboratory practice. Olivia, I'd like to welcome you up to the stage.
Habari za asubuhi. Good morning, everyone. I tried. First of all, I would like to thank the symposium organizer for inviting me here and allowing me to share with you all Village Reach's perspective on the system-level change that requires when you try to introduce the use of drone into a health supply chain of a country. And this perspective is based on, about almost 20 years of experience of using the system-level approach for implementing, scaling, and making sustainable system innovation. And specifically in the drone space, Villagery started working in the space about 7 years ago and started implementing pilot studies back in 2015, actually, with UNICEF in Malawi. Actually, Judith presented the results where we're looking at drone for transporting samples for early infant diagnostics for HIV. And since then, Villagery is implementing three studies in 3 countries, one in Malawi, looking at emergency delivery of oxytocin and blood in the context of maternal health emergency. In Mozambique, for transporting TB sample for accelerating the diagnosis of TB. And recently in DR Congo, looking at drone for transporting vaccine. To assure the safe and reliable and sustainable use of drone, we need to take a comprehensive approach and look at the drone as the whole system and consider all the system elements that compose an unmanned aerial system. Today, I would like to share with you a framework that Villagery has been using to guide the development of this different subsystem element. But first, I would like to share with you this video.
EC is go. Copy, S is go.
Houston flight is go.
Pilot go. STM is go. Safety com is go. STE is go. LRD is go. SRO is go. CDI is go. Launch director, NTD, our launch team is ready.
So you can hear on the background that they're going through all the system, and all the system has to be a go to have a successful launch. And while I understand it would be pretentious to compare launching a space shuttle with launching a drone, I think that there is a good analogy with what we are trying to accomplish in the big picture, which is really setting up all the system elements that compose a UAS. And so USS can come and complement, not replace, but complement an existing transportation system to support the delivery of health product to the communities, no matter where they are, all the way to the last mile. Now, I would like to take a few minutes and go back in time 70, 80 years ago, when trucks, 4x4 trucks, were first introduced to deliver health product. Do you think that all the subsystem elements that allow today, 70, 80 years later, the routine use of truck for delivering health product were in place from the very first day? Well, let's take a look. If it goes, there we go. So here's a framework that looks and compares the state of each subsystem element for trucks when they were first introduced and now, and for the UAS. Let's just go through the list of system elements, starting with technology. Truck technology are reliable now, but 70 years ago, trucks were definitely not reliable, and the workforce to maintain such a new technology did not exist, and I think we would agree with that. Now, what about the drone? Unfortunately, I would say that currently drones are in general not reliable in the environment, and I insist on that, in the environment where they would be used here in sub-Saharan Africa. There are crashes, and that is normal. We are in the early stage. Trucks crashed too way back then. They still do, but drones for payload delivery are still in a nascent stage, and like every new technology, we are going through an extensive learning phase, a research and development phase, and I really truly believe that it's only a matter of time until the technology, what we see today, until the technology will be able to respond to the specific requirement of the last mile, the sub-Saharan Africa last mile. However, based on our experience, I would recommend manufacturers to come out here in sub-Saharan Africa and test the technology in the harsh environment and for a prolonged period of time. Not just 1 week, not 2 weeks, but for a sustained period of time to really push their technology, the drone to the limit, and really get the field experience here where ultimately the drone will be used, not back in Europe or in US. And I'm personally a big fan of this event because this is an opportunity to start that. Now, I do recognize that it is not cheap to come and do extensive field testing, let alone here in sub-Saharan Africa. And that the funding environment is really not allowing manufacturers to come and spend extensive time down here. But I can tell you that players at the global level are aware of that, and Villageries is one of them, and we are really pushing to influence the donor community to start funding adequately to allow manufacturers and to allow studies to be more of a long term. People know how to operate trucks, drive them, fix them, do preventive maintenance, and the infrastructure associated with trucks exists. But back then, just a few people were familiar with this new technology, and just like today with drone. In fact, drone manufacturers are still figuring out how to operate their drone, how to fix them, still trying to figure out the preventive maintenance schedule, which is a critical component when you think sustainability, scalability and sustainability. Right now, very little is known about preventing maintenance because drones have not been used on a regular basis for a prolonged period of time. So it's going to take time, but it's a journey. We are all in this journey together, but we are at the early stage. From the logistic standpoint, today logisticians know how to use truck to deliver essential medicine, for example. They understand their limitation, how to manage a fleet of truck. For the most part, people understand the cost implication and how to price truck. But back then, in the 70s, for example, people did not understand the operational cost of truck. Just like right now, nobody truly knows how much it would cost to use drone on a regular basis for a sustained period of time. In fact, the true cost of ownership is still an unanswered question, and the presentation from Jean-Christophe was a good illustration of that. Today, there's certainly human resources that are trained and able to support and service truck. But again, back then, truck when they were first introduced, that was certainly not the case. And it's the same for drone. Local expertise is underway to be developed, and there are organizations such, here in Tanzania, the Humanitarian Open Sheet Map, as well as Robotics, and many others, who are developing programs to help transfer the competencies needed to ensure the scalability and the sustainability of use of drone. And that include pilot, that include technician, that include UTM specialists, data analysts, and so on. These days, trucks are integrated into the overall transport system that support the health supply chain of a country. And everybody understands how truck fits within the overall supply chain system. But when truck was first introduced, people had to figure it out and figure out when it made sense, the most sense to use truck, how truck can complement the other mode of transportation. Well, now for drones, many governments and partners are trying to figure that out. But mostly, so far, mostly studies that you see out there are, again, short pilot study, proof of concept. And the main two studies that we heard a lot about is Zipline in Rwanda and Maternet in Switzerland. But to really figure out when and where drone fit into an existing transport system, we're going to need long-term deployment. And in fact, we are actually still trying to figure out what are the use cases for which it makes sense to use drone, for which it's feasible, cost-effective, and that would result on a strong health impact, which at the end, let's not forget, it is what we are trying to accomplish, to support and improve health service delivery. At the global level, Village Reach is currently partnering with BCG with funding from the Interagency Supply Chain Group to identify and prioritize use cases in order to help the donor community strategize, align their investment to really accelerate the development of the drone technology for those prioritized use cases. From a business standpoint, business model standpoint, the question is, how can we make sure that this new mode of transportation can be scale up and sustain itself? Does it make sense to have the government own a fleet of drones and assure all the costs, the associated costs, the capex, the opex, the maintenance, taking into consideration the depreciation? Or does it make more sense to contract a private drone transport service? Or should we consider a PPP, public-private partnership, like it's happening in Rwanda with government, Zipline, and UPS? The answer is we don't know yet, but really how could we know, since we are still trying to have reliable drones, we are still trying to figure out when and where the drones fits into an existing supply chain, and still trying to understand the true cost of ownership of drones. Many partners like DTBI here in Tanzania, GSI, and even Village Reach are working to generate that data to answer these business model questions. In terms of safety regulation, Harrison yesterday gave a great talk about where things stand in that regard. But what about cargo safety regulation for handling and transporting product, and especially biohazard material like blood? Blood is actually considered as biohazard, or potentially infectious laboratory samples. Now we are carrying, that's the kind of cargo we are looking at transporting. While at the opposite, the drone that are used for mapping, you're not dealing with that. So what about the cargo safety regulation? In addition to safety, cargo regulation must address the need to conserve the potency of the product being transported. Because what's the point of carrying some product if the potency of the quality of the laboratory sample is not good for informing a decision around treatment? So regulation is also to take into consideration how to make sure to keep the potency, the quality of what is being transported. In regard to public acceptance, certainly the public accept trucks driving around, but again, truck was some kind of futuristic vehicle back then. People were not comfortable around them. They were a source of accident and fatalities, which resulted in pushback from the communities and stakeholders. For drone, a lot of work is being done to promote public acceptance by many partners, FHI 360, UNICEF, GSI. But a recent extensive stakeholder and community acceptance evaluation study performed by Village Reach in Malawi showed that misconception and fear of drone is still a reality. In addition, because drones are still not reliable, resulting in unexpected events such as crash, it's absolutely a necessity to continue extensive community sensitization and advocacy, and work with community leaders community leaders and key stakeholders. Let me give you an example. It is thanks to a strong communication and advocacy strategy that Village Reach managed to keep the government of Malawi and the public interested and supportive of continuing drone study in Malawi, even with the recent unfortunate events. So I hope that this exercise comparing the situation when trucks were first introduced and drone at this stage really illustrates that we we are at an early stage. We are trying to figuring all those different systems, and each of those subsystem elements in the video. And while we're not there yet, with the energy and the talent that's here in this room, we are making rapid progress. And it is even like today that will help accelerate the development of drone technology for payload delivery in the public health sector and beyond. I want to finish by just introducing you to the UAV for payload delivery working group, which is a working group that's been created about 3 years ago. And we're a group about 200 we just passed last week 200 members coming from various sectors. There is an example here of who's involved. You have public, private, donors, academic, drone manufacturers, modelists, implementers, and so on. And the working group, really, the goal is to share knowledge, share experience, you know, to learn from each other and really accelerate the development. And we organize webinar, roundtable discussion, newsletter has been sent every 2 weeks, and so people stay on top of the latest in the space of the use of drone for payload delivery. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Olivier. And we appreciate the analogy to the history of trucks and their use in supply chain, and a couple of very important elements: sustainability, critical if we're going to keep moving forward, scalability, and also the mention of how attention to detail is very important, and sharing was at that NASA checklist. Next up this morning, I'd like to introduce Wanisha Ali Said. She is a General Manager of Business Operations at Posta Tanzania. Wanisha serves as a General Manager of Business Operations for all 20 postal regions, including 6 major business departments, mails, logistics, and e-business. Wanisha, we'd like to welcome you up front.
Habari za asubuhi. Good morning, everybody. Honorable members of Tanzania and the neighboring countries' delegations, guests, participants, and the media, good morning again. Mine, it is a speech and not a presentation. I have just a small speech for you. On behalf of Postmaster General, it is a pleasure to be at this August event, which I informed is a one of a kind and the first in our region. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to start by explaining who we are. In 1977, the government of Tanzania set up the Tanzania Posts and Telecommunication Corporation. Due to the public sector reform, in 1993, the government reorganized the postal and telecommunications sector, which established Tanzania Post Corporation. In short, it's called the TPC. It is formed as the public postal operator, as the separate entity from Tanzania Telecommunication Company, which is called the TTCL, and separated from Tanzania Postal Banking. Now it is called the TPB. In 1993, under Act number 19 of the United Republic of Tanzania, Parliament passed a law to establish Tanzania Post Corporations. Within Tanzania, Tanzania Post Corporation operates in 158 departmental offices, 90 franchised postal offices, 65 sub-postal offices, 31 mail delivery centers, 212 private bags, and 173 postal letters boxes. Also, Tanzania Post Corporation is connected to the world postal networks of about 660,000 offices. Ladies and gentlemen, our vision is that Tanzania Post Corporation desires to be recognized worldwide as an efficient, effective, and outstanding public postal enterprise. Also, our mission is to provide efficiently universal quality postal services that meet customers' expectations. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Act of 1933, Tanzania Post Corporation has the following functions. The first function is to provide postal services within Tanzania and outside Tanzania. Also, to meet industrial, commercial, and social household needs of the nation for comprehensive and efficient postal services and any other means that the corporation consider reasonably practicably to satisfy all reasonable demands for such services throughout the United Republic of Tanzania. Also, we have another function to provide services by which funds may be remitted, whether by means of money order, postal order, or otherwise that the corporation thinks fit. Also, to provide counter services for the corporation's own and government business, and provided that they are compatible with those services and with other principal objects set out in this subsection for other as the corporation thinks fit. Ladies and gentlemen, although Tanzania Post Corporation is a designated postal operator, in fact, it is by law required to operate on a commercial basis and to generate revenue to cover all costs of operations and revenues. Also, Tanzania Post Corporation is required by universal services obligation to offer postal services to all citizens, regardless of whether the services is profitable or not. It is the Tanzania Post Corporation social responsibility to provide postal services, especially where there are schools, hospitals, health centers, research centers, and cooperative centers, and cooperative societies. Ladies and gentlemen, Tanzania Post Corporation sees this Lake Victoria challenge is an opportunity for the corporation to be innovative in solving the challenges that it faces. For example, currently, Tanzania Post Corporation has contracted with the Ministry of Health, Boresha Afya, MBH, Agipai. All this we have contracted for collecting and distribute TB and dry samples and its results from one hub to either hospitals or health center. Tanzania Post Corporation is doing this project in 10 regions. These are Iringa, Morogoro, Mbeya, Musoma, Mtwara, Lindi, Ruvuma, Dar es Salaam, Rukwa, and Mwanza. In this case, the main challenge is one of transportation due to the rough terrain and long distance from one center to another, especially in rural areas. We see that the use of drones has a big potential in allowing Tanzania Post Corporation to make the said deliveries. Distinguished participants, have stated the above, Tanzania Post Corporation wants to utilize the knowledge of Lake Victoria challenge to build a use case for the use of this technology with regards to Tanzania Post Corporation functions. We have the following functions. The first function is mail and logistics. TPC deliver mails, packets, ordinary mails, packet, parcel, and cargo within Tanzania and outside Tanzania. Also, we have courier services. These are express services. This includes pickup and deliver all documents, small packets or large packets, parcel and cargo, which this is done inside and outside the country. Also, we have financial and agency services within and outside the United Republic of Tanzania. TPC offers financial services by means of electronic money transfer. Example of this is money order and Western Union. Also, we have electronic business within Tanzania and outside Tanzania. In these functions, we have internet cafe. Also, we have 2 online shops. Ladies and gentlemen, TPC now wants to be part of the digital renovation and sees Lake Victoria challenge as a catalyst to innovation and the building of use cases. For example, the use of fabrication labs in proposed Jamii Center, or you can call it a one-stop center, to provide better services with greater efficiency. This also includes the usage of drones for the delivery of mails and other services to the rural and urban populations. Ladies and gentlemen, in conclusion, we are happy to be here in this event, and we welcome anyone to partner with us in building a use case for the case of drones and fab lab technologies to enhance our services and make us a sustainable cooperation. Finally, I wish to thank Mwanza Secretariat, World Bank team, and all partners who consider us to be very important participants in this event. Thank you for listening. Asanteni sana.
Juanisha, thank you very much for informing us of the vision of the Tanzania postal operations and their potential use of drones in the near future. And for our final speaker this morning, I'd like to introduce Mr. Dirk Rabian, the project manager of GIZ. Mr. Rabian serves as project manager for the CIZ BMZ-funded project Access to High Quality and Affordable Medicines in Africa and Asia. His responsibilities include conception and implementation of a pilot project in cooperation with DHL. Mr. Rabian, welcome.
Hamjambo mabibi na mabwana. Habari za asubuhi. Sawa, nafurahi sana. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm happy here to present a pilot project. As he already introduced me, I work as project manager in a project called Better Access to Medicines. And one of the questions in the field of access to medicines is, of course, the logistic of the supply chain of supplying medicines. So, yesterday, George Mulamula and Ansgar Kadura already presented briefly the pilot project, so I don't want to duplicate it too much. I quickly want to talk about our first pilot phase, and I give an overview about a second planned phase, and we want to show a short video. So finally, we could convince DHL to partner with DTBI, to partner with Wingcopter and GIZ to carry out a pilot project. And we were very pleased that the regional commissioner of Mwanza, John Mongella, invited us to carry out a pilot project in this region. It derived from a design thinking workshop carried out in Germany. We had 60 participants from various fields, from logistic companies, pharmaceutical companies, small companies, 30 participants from Africa, 30 Europeans. And like that, in 10 small groups, we were working on the question, how can we improve the last mile logistics? And in one group, the idea was developed, we could use drones, which was a challenge for the most of us. It's still a challenge for organizations and ministries and politics, as we heard previously. And the idea is, behind the project is, it's 1.6 million people die every year in Africa, and because of not functioning medical treatment. And the cause is very often a lack of access to medicines. And as you know, and we discussed, very bad roads, insufficient medical supply chain. And the key could be using drones in very rural areas, in difficult areas. So the first phase we carried out this year for 6 months. Partners from Germany were GRZ, Wingcopter, DHL, and the major partners, implementing partners on Tanzanian side were the regional commissioner, as mentioned, DART, DTPI, Medical Store Department, TCAA, Ministry of Health. And of course, we got good support from the Ministry of Defense as well, and part of the implementing team was a captain from military defense as well. And like that, we could establish a flight corridor to fly to Ukerewe Island and back. So, yeah, in the first phase, and we will see it in the video, we covered a distance of 60 kilometers forth and back, flying medicines to Ukerewe Islands, flying lab samples back. And maybe briefly, the second pilot phase, we will concentrate on the health impact again. So we will establish very regular flights between Bugando Hospital and the medical center of Nansiu. A major component will be knowledge and technology transfer. And like that, we aim to train 12 pilots, which should be receive an international certification that they could work all over Africa and all over the world, maybe. And last not least, in close cooperation with DTBI and hopefully Posta, we will work on a business case analysis. So, yeah, we can skip this. So, the objective will be to delivery for 6 months again. And afterwards, we want to extend to fly to neighboring islands as well, which is still a challenge because we always need a pilot to have a pilot on both ends. A so-called safety pilot, and of course we also have one staff member is always based in the tower of Mwanza, flight security, as we treat these flights like regular plane flights. Okay. So the future vision is to discover new fields in this second phase, which we want to carry out for a period of 1 year up to 18 months, to identify new business cases, extending new application fields, and of course to support local startups in Tanzania, especially in this region. And like that, we want to increase the social, economical impact of drone delivery in Tanzania. Thank you so much. And we have a video which we could show now. and hopefully it's possible to reduce the light a little bit so that we can see it a little bit more clear. Thank you.
Our people need medicine. If they cannot get them, it means they are gone.
Especially in the areas that have got geographical challenges, like Ukerewe Island, which is at the midst of Lake Victoria.
We have about more than 400,000 people in Ukerewe district. And we face a number of diseases such as malaria, typhoid, schistosomiasis, and the like.
Sasa kwa kuwa tuko kisiwani, kweli inaweza ikatokea bahati mbaya tukakoswa dawa kwa sababu tu hatuna uwezo wa kuvuka siku hiyo na kupata dawa.
We are responsible of distributing medicine in the Lake Victoria region. The last mile supply is so difficult because of the infrastructure. Our roads are still very poor, especially in the rural area. We can go by lake, but the vessel in the lake, they are not reliable.
And you don't get the diagnosis results on time. You don't get the necessary medicines on time. There is a threat of death. We thought of how we can improve delivery of health supplies, especially to those hard-to-reach island areas.
So that's where the parcel copter come into play.
The parcel-copter can overcome a number of challenges, especially in the areas that are not easily reachable.
Parcel copter always fly autonomously, and we see where drone it is just in case we can make any decision at the right time. The tilt water technology give the drone to go vertically and then change the mode to transition mode.
They can land at a very small area where you don't have runways. The technology itself is innovative in the sense that it really addresses the challenges that we have in Tanzania.
There is a case of snake bite, tetanus patient. We need a quick delivery of drugs.
Not only parcel copter will deliver commodities quickly, but also can help in the cold chain.
We'll make sure the temperature is not compromised. The products will get to the patient with the quality is required.
So we design a mission, then we upload the mission to the drone. We send autonomously to the place where we want to go. Like here we send from Mwanza to Ukerewe Islands.
Samples are collected in district hospital, and then on a weekly basis they are taken to Uganda Medical Center. But with the parcel copter project, they can be taken after every 2 or even 3 hours.
They need to get the results as early as quickly so as the patient can start the treatment.
I should take this opportunity to thank DHL, the GIZ under the German Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, and the Wingcopter team. We had tough times when we started, but now we see light at the end of the tunnel.
Kwa maisha mbele na ya baadaye, nilikuwa naomba hiki kitu kisije kikatoka, kiendelee kuwepo sababu kinatusaidia sisi na wengine wanaokuja pia. Kwa hiyo tunakuwa na usaidizi mkubwa.
If this can be scaled throughout the country, that would be so lovely.
This is a project that is going to save a lot of lives.
It will change the whole equation completely.
This is going to be a big achievement, an icebreaker into the drone technology in Tanzania and probably in Africa.
All right, Dirk, thank you very much for sharing that medical supply chain solution. And ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our session on how UAS will be integrated into logistics solutions. Could you please give a hand to Dirk, Juanisha, and Olivier? Thank you all very much for your time this morning.
Maybe we should make me general. I still think So, as I said earlier, we've promoted you to Major now. Please give a hand to Cliff, sweetie. And you now have heard the opportunities that are here, and some more will be coming. So let's be open-minded and think out of the box and come up with ways of coming up with solutions. And I've always said that where there is a problem, it creates an opportunity. So this is what it is, and that's what we're doing here. Now, as we move on to the next phase, I think most of you would have registered for the different tracks, the 3 major tracks that I mentioned earlier on. If you registered for the infrastructure track, and which is the group that is also going to be going to Juma Island, Andreas, where are you? Yes, he's standing in the back there. So he's going to lead you downstairs to the boardroom to try. Don't be in a hurry, Andreas. You need to show them where they're going. And so you're not going to fly down. There's no drone that's going to take you there. We'll just use our legs to go downstairs and to the boardroom where you'll discuss the logistics. And I'm told that the boats, the rain dance. Someone texted me and said, "Did you really do the rain dance?" That means you really think I can fly if I jump off the wall. So, but it's going to take you downstairs, do the logistics. The rain is sort of pitted away so that you can now discuss and then plan as to how you're going to get to Juma Island. So for those, you can now at least go along with them. It's and Jonathan is also, the legend man for drone ports, is also attending. So please feel free to take that track. We'll miss you here, but we'll keep you in mind as you go there. So for those who are left here, we're going to go to the next stage, which is the UTMS services. And this is going to be led by none other than Jean-Christopher Zuferi. You're here, Jean? Who's Jean-Christopher? Ah, all right, great. I mean, you heard about his bio yesterday. I think everybody knew. He introduced himself, so I don't have to redo it again. So he's going to lead the track for the next session, and then we'll see what happens. Karibu. Welcome, Jean.
Thank you, George. Good morning, everyone. So my name is Jean-Christophe Zufre. I founded SenseFly 10 years ago. Discussed that yesterday, so I guess most of you were there. So it's all about mapping drones. And I think with drones in general, we are facing many challenges. But one of them is really to try and integrate them in the sky. So drones are really new airspace users that need not to collide with airliners, with other airspace users. And this is a big challenge for many reasons. So today, we'll hear about that through 4 speakers that are UTM. By the way, UTM stands for Unmanned Traffic Management. UTM service providers. And with that, I would like to start with Mark Cohen. Mark is Chief Commercial Officer at Unifly. And before joining this company, Mark held different positions in the IT and business process outsourcing industry, sales, pre-sales, and account management, including at Xerox. Mark is now leading the commercialization of the Unifly software suite on a global scale, and will certainly tell us more about this solution in a minute. Mark, stage is yours.
Thank you, George, for this introduction. So, I'm glad to be here. I'm the first UTM provider that will give the presentation. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what Unifly does. Let me see if I can figure this out. Yeah. So Unifly was founded in 2012 by two military air traffic controllers and a pilot. They saw drones were coming and knew that it was going to be a challenge integrating drones with in the existing airspace. One of the things that is key for the company is collaboration. So we work a lot together with drone manufacturers, drone detection systems, because we know we can't do it all. But the other thing that is critical for us is safety, making sure that we can integrate drones. We think the challenge isn't so much with commercial airliners, because they fly at 11,000 feet or higher, where drones fly up to 500 feet. It's just a challenge around the airport. And helicopters, because they share the same airspace as drones do. They fly up to 500 feet, and a lot of those crafts, they don't have transponders on board, so you don't see them on a radar. So the big challenge for us is there, and we try to find solutions around that. So the Unifly platform has been created around the Unifly core, which is the back end we use. And we have modules targeted to drone operators and authorities. So on the left side you see the end users, so the drone operators, the drone pilots, and additional service providers. Companies like Amazon, like DHL, Volocopters, air taxi companies. And on the right side we have modules targeted specifically towards the authorities, towards the airspace managers, the air navigation service providers, police and local authorities. And in the presentation I talk a little bit more of the modules we have for those authorities. On the top side you see the demand aviation, because it is important to integrate those. There are some discussions going on because the air traffic controllers, they've got enough on their plate already. They don't want to see the drones on their screens. And at the bottom, which is important, is what we call the UTM client. The UTM client is our link to our partners and other companies. So we've got an open API, so you're able to link to a drone and get the information and telemetry from the drone in the platform. Not all of the drones can do that, so we have different devices that can be put on the drone to make them visible. Some of the technologies are ADS-B, which is used in manned aviation as well, but it's low-powered ADS-B, so it's a different frequency. We got trackers that transmit the location of the drone over the cellular network. We got trackers that use satellite navigation, and then some others that use FLARM, which is a protocol that is used a lot in Europe for gliders. So we support all of those trackers, and with that we can make drones visible to the authorities. And then the ground control stations, which is important as well. We link to a number of ones. So you make your mission in the ground control station, you put your flight plan in, that is then sent to our platform where you do the validation, and then later on you can track via the ground station where the drone is flying. There's one bullet missing, something we've been working on for the last couple of months, is integration with drone detection systems like drone radars, where they see drones, which is important as well, and we link to them as well. We've done a European project and had presented the first results 2 weeks ago. So the drone radar detects all of the drones that are in the area. They give that feed to our platform. We know which drones should be flying there, so we can distinguish the cooperative drones with the non-cooperative drones. And we've shown that in the UK 3 weeks ago. So looking at the UTM functionalities, these are the functionalities we've got in our, integrated in our platform. So we got drone registration and identification. It can be handled within the Unifly platform completely, or if the country has a drone registration system already, we can link into that registration system. A good example there is what we're doing in Belgium right now. The CA in Belgium, they have a system where all of the drone operators that have a commercial license are already registered, and we link into that platform. So they register in our platform, we link up to the system from the CA in Belgium, and we get all of the information of the drone pilots for that operator and the drones that are registered under which he can fly with his license. And that information is getting imported into the Unifly platform, and then he can do his flight planning using those drones. The information we get from the Belgian CA, you can't change that information in our platform. They can add additional drones they want to fly with outside of their license. but the drones within their license, it's impossible to change them. Then the second part is dynamic airspace management. So we have airspace information, validated airspace information into our platform, which we're getting from validated sources. Next to that, it is possible for the authorities to add additional no-fly zones. So in Denmark, for example, they added police stations, embassies, prisons, federal buildings, and nature reserves, because those are no-fly zones in Denmark. In Germany, they did the same. I'm not going to name them all because it's a nightmare there. If you're a commercial drone operator and want to fly, there's not a lot of space. Because, for example, if there's a waterway which has commercial traffic on it, you can't fly over it with a drone. So all of that information can be put into the system using our dynamic airspace management module. Also, it gives you the possibility to create no-fly zones on the fly. So, for example, an accident happened on the highway, you don't want people flying over it, you just point and click over that area, create a no-fly zone, say from when till when it is valid, and the information will be pushed out to the system immediately. So drones that are flying will get an alert via our mobile app. If you have an operation that is impacted by it but not active, the operators will get an email informing them the airspace has changed, their flight isn't valid anymore, and they need to relook at their flight plan. The next one is drone surveillance and tracking, so that's keeping an eye where the drones are, but also giving alerts when a drone comes close to manned aviation, or a drone comes close to a drone, or a drone is flying into a no-fly zone. We're also working on, if you have your flight plan, that we know that area, so if your drone is going outside of the plan that you've made, you'll get an alert as an airspace manager as well. Which is also part of the dynamic drone fly management, and then we got drone flow management as well. So I've touched on it a little bit, but we got some functionalities targeted to the authorities. So one of the things is to reach out to your community and have that information easy, accessible and easy readable. A lot of the drone operators and the drone users, also the recreational ones, they haven't got a clue what the aviation rules are. If you talk to them about a CTR or an HTA, they don't know what it is. So we make sure that we inform that audience with easy information that is accessible and readable for them. For that, we have a web page which gives a no-fly zones map, which just is a static web page, as well as a mobile app with which the user can, on their location, check whether they can fly or not. Then manage the airspace, manage the access to the airspace. I already mentioned publishing no-fly zones in real time. We got automated instantaneous flight approvals based on local rules and regulations, but also a manual authorization process flow. So if your flight can't be validated manually, but you need to go through a process, need to fill in a form, get some additional information and some documentation sent out to the authorities, we can support that. So we've got that automated flow in our platform. We collect all of the information that is needed and then send that to the authorities that need to do the authorizations. And that can be multi-level. So it can be going out to the CAA that needs to give an authority. It can be that a local municipality needs to give an authority as well. In Europe, we're working with some harbors that want to have something to say about the airspace as well. So we can have different level of authorities being given in that manual process. We can send notifications out to the pilots, notifications that they're flying into a no-fly zone, notification that the airspace has been changed, a notification they're coming close to another drone operator or a manned aircraft. And we manage the database, so the registered pilot and the registered drones are into our system. We got flight logbooks, so we keep log of all of the flights that have been used. Special authorizations you need to bid on, all of that information is kept into our platform. Is there been an incident, you can log that as well and send the incident report to the necessary authorities you need to do. Monitor flight traffic in real time, so real-time flight visualization and statuses, and then also alerts if something comes close to you that shouldn't be there. And as I said, we've got multiple levels of authorities. And then the functionalities for the RPAS or the UAV operators. So easy to use mobile and web applications. There's limited aviation knowledge that is needed to be able to use those platforms. We got complete and accurate national and local rules into our platform. Do we have them in our system for the globe? No, we do it step by step. We have to look at the local rules and regulations, but it takes us 2 to 3 weeks to implement it. I can give a demo in the exposition area later on, We've got some of the rules and regulations from Tanzania in our platform, and the airspace information like national parks and all of those. It took us 3 weeks to implement it. So it's not a long effort. The challenge quite often is getting the right rules and regulations from the different countries. Plan and validate your operations. So you can plan your operation in our platform, have it validated, have an automatic flight approval if that's possible, or do the manual authorization flow. And you can also manage your pilot crew and your drone fleet. So you can be a dispatcher using our platform, planning the operation and assigning the operation to one of your pilots, and he then will be notified that he has an operation, and then he can execute the operation. And also as a drone operator, you can keep track of your flights. You'll also see other drones flying in the area and manned aviation. The difference with the authorities, if you click on the craft, you get the information of the pilot, the information of the operator and the drone. For the operator, if you click on it, you only get that information for your own drones. So if another drone is flying, you see that the drone is flying there, but you don't get the personal information of the person or the company that is behind. Implementing a UTM system, in our experience, is a step-by-step approach. You don't implement UTM, full UTM as of one day. So the way we've been implementing it is, so reach out effectively to your community first. Make sure you've got readable information, easy to access channels, have a no-fly zones map, and instantaneous flight approvals via a mobile app. The second step is manage the airspace. Publish no-fly zones, have the flight authorization process in place, notify the pilots, and manage the database of the registered drones and the registered pilots and the license you provide. And then the third step is monitor the drone traffic in real time. Have real-time flight status and tracking, visualize both the manned and the unmanned, and do conflict resolution. There is a fourth step, which we don't have on the slide here, which is in the far future, where you have really autonomous drones that have artificial intelligence in there, and there's no pilot involved anymore. The drones take off, and then the software in the drone will do the deconfliction. So we'll be sending all of the information from the UTM system to that drone, and it will be the artificial intelligence in the drone that will handle and change flights based on the information he's receiving. This is an example of an UTM solution with some roles and responsibilities. So we have our web application for the pilots, the mobile application for the drone operators once they are flying. We can link to the ground station as well, so it can either be our mobile app or the mobile app from the ground station. We are linked to the NOTAM database, so every minute we're checking the NOTAM database, we're getting NOTAMs into our system and parse them, which is a challenge because sometimes there are some typing errors in the NOTAM, and it's difficult to parse the NOTAMs. And then we've got modules for the regulator, the CAA, so registration and special authorities, and then some modules for the admin supervisors, which can be the CAA as well, the ANSP, the Department of Transport, airports, emergency services, local authorities. They will have the map manager where they can create dynamically and temporary no-fly zones, and they have flight view where they can see where the planes and the drones are flying. Now what makes the Unifly solution unique? Safety is in our DNA. In our management team, we have 2 pilots, and they're not drone operators. If I say a drone pilot in the office, I get slapped because they say drone pilots aren't real pilots. We are. We got 2 air traffic controllers into our management team and 2 drone operators, and then some other people who have an IT background. So safety really is in our DNA. We got state-of-the-art technology. We got a clear long-term vision where we want to go. Unmanned for us is more than drones. We are looking to urban air mobility, but also urban mobility, so unmanned vehicles on the ground as well. A good example there is Airbus with their air taxi they're building. It's a drone, but it will land, then the propellers will go off, and it will continue driving. So as a UTM system, do you just want to monitor the air taxi when he's in the air and then lose track when he's driving? We think the UTM system will manage all of that. And we got some good experience. We got 4 ANSPs in Europe that are using our platform. So Deutsche Flugsicherung in Germany, Naviair in Denmark, Austrocontrol in Austria, and then Belgo Control in Belgium. But we're also globally active. So we are the UTM service provider in New York State in the US. And we also have a collaboration with Hitachi. What they did is they translated our screens into Japanese, and they are now pushing the UTM system in Japan using the UniFly backends. Okay, that's been my presentation.
Thank you, Mark. Let's move to the next speaker. Manu Lubrano is CEO and co-founder at Involi. In fact, I know Manu quite well, as he was head of industrialization at SenseFly in my company before. He also co-founded the NGO Drone Adventures, who carried out many different mapping projects, mostly in emergency response, many interesting ones. He holds a PhD in manufacturing systems and robotics from the Swiss Federal Institute of Technology. And he's particularly skilled in computer science, robotics, industrialization, and management. He will now tell us more about Involi. Manu, stage is yours.
Hi everybody, it's a pleasure to be here today. Sorry, I don't know any Swahili word to say apart Sasa, but I think it's not relevant here, so okay. I am the CEO and co-founder of Involi, as Jean-Christophe said. I'm going to present you why air traffic data is important for the drone business. Yes, excellent. So I was head of industrialization at SenseFly, and I was also the co-founder of Drone Adventures. So I know pretty well how drones for mapping works and how they can be used in country like yours. What's interesting is that this is the use of drone in the humanitarian context. What is interesting for you is that Tanzania has been one of the first countries in using on a very big mission the EB drones together with Drone Adventure to create the cartography of two big islands here. You will see it very soon. Okay, so I think there is a small delay here. The island of Unjuya and the island of Pemba have been cartographed using SenseFly drones thanks to a mission done by Drone Adventure. And this is very nice because it allows to say that Tanzania is really on the top of technology of the use of these new drones. And as you can see from the screen, 1,500 drone flights have been done in order to create these very precise maps of these two countries. So congratulations, because this is something very unique all around the world for a country to understand how good drones could be. The problem is it's not always like this everywhere. So sometimes this happens. We wanted to use drones in Nepal to help after the earthquake, and it wasn't possible because there was a harsh regulation that came out and that allowed drones to not fly. Why this is happening? Because there is a big problem with drone. It's very difficult to coordinate manned and unmanned operation today for a very simple reason. Drones are blind to air traffic. So drones are not able to see airplanes, helicopters, everything which is flying around them. So what happened? The regulators say we need to block these drones, and this is a pity because there are all this incredible possibility for drones up there, right? And this is when Involi come into the picture. Maybe, yes, too far away. Sorry guys, some little technical problems I'm having. Okay, but basically what I'm trying to tell you here is that traffic awareness is something which is very important, okay? Today we are very good in having air traffic information around the airports. Oh, here we are, the current situation. Around the airports or at very high altitudes. But then, as soon as we go far away from these areas, we cannot see airplanes or helicopters. Then Involicom install our system in a broad network of all over the country, and then we can detect all the other airplanes, helicopters which are flying over a certain area. Why this is important for drones? This is important because it's exactly the same areas where drones are flying as well. So here I'm talking about a limit of 2,000 feet. In the future, drones will also fly over 2,000 feet, for example, for drone taxi and things like this. And so the system that Involi provides allows to really open the picture and see more and more air traffic to help drones arrive. This is our device that you can see here. We have installed 4 of those devices around Mwanza in order to assist the drone flight here in order to track air traffic and drones, and we fabricate them in Switzerland. Our approach is the following. Basically, we talk with a telecommunication company. They have very nice spots around the world, around the country, sorry, and we install our device over their antenna. Then from there, we start to fetch all their traffic. Once we receive all the air traffic, we provide it to the drone or we provide it to the air traffic in order to, well, use it for different reasons like drones, etc. This is a proof of concept we are doing today in Switzerland. So you can see we cover a large area of 8,000 square kilometers using just 7 antennas. And it's exactly the same thing that we're doing here today. This is a capture of the air traffic that we can get with our system in Switzerland. So the orange air traffic are communicating in ADS-B, while the white one are using transponder. Then we continue developing the system, and now we're also able to detect FLARM devices, which is another identification technology. What is very interesting is that you're seeing this airplane, which is flying at 3,700 feet above mean sea level. It's actually flying at extremely low altitude compared to the ground, and this is an aircraft that not even the air traffic controller in Switzerland can see, but we can see it. So we are really giving this full coverage. So what is our recipe to have a safe drone integration? Basically, it's having a 100% coverage of a country with our system, especially the Gulf airspace, and then being able to detect all possible identification technologies of air traffic, and then provide this position to ATC, to UTM, to drones, to whoever needs them. Last but not least, the other point would be also to favorize the integration of cooperative drones, like we're doing here in Tanzania. All the drones are equipped here with a low-power ADS-B emitter, so we can also see them in our screen. Sometimes there is some suspense, but then things come. Okay, so this is the model of interaction that we want to put in Switzerland. So basically, from Swisscom infrastructure, we detect air traffic. We give it to SkyGuide, which is the air traffic controller. SkyGuide give it to AirMap, which is the UTM, and then AirMap basically provide it to drones and other users. This is today our coverage, also ventilated by different technologies. And surprise, also for me, and this is the coverage that we have today in Mwanza. So basically you can see the airport on the right, then basically we detect all airplanes equipped with ADS-B, and we provide the position to AirMap, which is here with us and is talking later, and from AirMap we could go to the air traffic controller or to drone operators. So basically, this low altitude air traffic data is the key here. This is something unique that doesn't exist anywhere else. Low altitude air traffic data can be used for many other applications instead of UTM, from safety to, I don't know, doing statistic of how the sky is used, to improve security, faster response in case of accident, validating ADS-B using multilateration. There is a lot of technical things that we can do with this data. And so this is kind of the key message for this presentation is the following. If you want to implement a UTM, so if you want really to manage drone traffic, you really need to have this low altitude air traffic data to be able to see how drones are located towards air traffic. So finally, the question that I always have is this disruptive? And so I have a little example on that. It's a funny one. So today, if you want to listen to some music, what do? You go in a shop and you buy a CD, right? But, hey, yes, we have seen this. But then this guy came out, Spotify, probably you know this company, and they say, look, you don't need to buy hardware anymore. You don't need to go to the shop anymore. We have music as a service, so you just download the music when you need it, right? Then in the same way, if you want, what do you have to do if you want to have reliable air traffic data? You want to do a drone mission here in Tanzania, etc. You want to see the airplanes which are flying around you. Well, there is no other way today you are obliged to buy a radar. But this is very expensive, right? And so what happened then? If the presentation helped me, Involi people came out and they say, look, you don't need to buy a radar anymore. Now we can just provide you a feed online of air traffic data, and you can use it for your mission. There we go. Okay, so thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy this event. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Manu. Very interesting to see how all of this is coming together. So I think now, how Manu mentioned, we'll go to AirMap with Robert Chikura. As a former French Air Force and NATO warrant officer, he started his career as a radio engineer for an early alert network. With a master in business sales management, and prior to join AirMap, Robert was involved in sale of surveillance VTOLs for law enforcement agencies across EMEA. He will now tell us more about AirMap solution, I'm sure. So Robert, stage is yours.
Well, thank you, Comcheck. You hear me good? You guys hear me? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for welcoming me here. I'll make it like morning, salama and jumbo for the locals. And I will make it like morgen, buongiorno, and bonjour for the Switzerland guys. Right? I'm Robert. I'm from AirMap, which is a US company, and I'm sales for EMEA. I was told I have 10 minutes to make my point, so it will be fast. Just a point, and I will go there. This is Africa. And this is rest of the world. So you guys are ahead of the rest of the world. I don't know if anybody realized that. In this business, Africa is ahead of the rest of the world. So, congratulations. Thank you. Right, AirMap, for those who like it. Well, no worries. It will come at some stage. Well, you first. So AirMap is supposed to open the airspace for drones, right? For those who have a sense of humor, I mean operators, AirMap is a cloud-based solution for airspace management / interesting positioning. You got the joke? Right. AirMap is 70, but up to 200 people around the world. This is the people on the payroll. We have consultants. We have 3 offices around the world. And we have a funding of 61 million from different big companies, including Microsoft, right? This is our delivery today. Well, hopefully. So FAA in US, Switzerland, I hope you guys got that. I believe you heard about it. Japan, and some other places like New Zealand, right? I skip this one because I know you guys can read what is written there. So basically I skip it. This one is most likely what has been explained already by my fellow colleagues. So this is a software that is used by regulators and is able to connect all the stakeholders in each and every country so that you are able to regulate this market. You are able to make it fly. Whoever is calling, I agree. This again, I will skip. Those are the kind of building blocks of UTM. It doesn't matter if you buy from us or anybody else, you will get the same. Start with a registry. I'm talking to the regulators. start registering drones and pilots. This is the beginning of it. Still, you don't have a UTM, but you can start with that. Now, this is my point. This is an application that anyone using Android, iOS, or Windows can download. If you guys download it here and use it here, you can interact with the UTM system we installed at the airport, but also at the hotel outside. On top of it, we're making some kind of lottery. We will pick up a phone number. I will call one person, and he will get a gift from AirMap. Thank you, AirMap. So basically, you guys, any of you can download that, right? You can download and interact with the UTM here for the duration of this event. Well, that's the flight authorization stuff. If you guys are downloading it, you will go through it. You will make a flight authorization request here. It doesn't matter if you have a drone. It doesn't matter if you are based in Dar es Salaam. If you are in Dar es Salaam, just type Mwanza as the address for the flight. But you can definitely, real-time, push a request to the UTM that is here for this exhibition. So it's real life, right? This display, this is a console for the air traffic control, regulator. We have one in the airport there, but it's far, and basically I don't believe anyone is attending there. And we have a display outside, which is supposed to, if you make a request real time with your mobile phone, you will see it popping on the console. Well, you will get a flight authorization right away, so no worries. Again, with or without a drone, it doesn't matter. If you have a drone, you can connect to the drone. If you don't have, you can still use the application. I skip this one because that display is outside. Hopefully, inshallah, like we say, if internet is good, you're going to see it working. It was working yesterday evening. We checked this morning as well. But we depend very much on the traffic on the internet here. Well, I'm calling to the network operators of Airtels and others. Help us. Well, last and final, this is the actual setup here. So we have a UTM that is today controlling the area from the airport to the island. We are working with Involi, and basically, we can display and manage deconfliction, right? This kind of setup took us like, well, 1 day of work in the US, half a day of work here, right? So this kind of setup, we can have quickly, any place, anytime, as far as you guys are jumping into the position of, well, stopping talking about it and trying it. That's the message. Well, I skip Q&As. If you have any questions, the answer is yes, we can do it. Thank you. Asante.
Thanks, Robert, and thank you very much to Involi and AirMap to put that together and to make sure that we have a UTM in place here in Mwanza. So now, next speaker will be Ayan Kamil. He leads the business development at Exponent. He was responsible for executing Exponent's first UTM implementation in Dubai. He strongly believes that UTM will be the key driver and facilitator for unmanned industry in the next decade. And I'm sure that he will tell us more how and why. Ayan.
Thank you, Gene. Hello, everyone. I am Ayhan. I represent Exponent based out of Dubai. Let me just set a timer here for myself so I don't exceed my time limit. So what I'm talking about today is to give you an idea of our journey so far in Dubai, the UTM journey, and basically also talk a little bit about the key drivers that initiated the need for such a system in Dubai and the challenges that Dubai generally faces as an aviation hub. So what happened? 2015, 2016, Dubai had an influx of basically a lot of hobbyist, recreational, commercial drones that were coming in, And you had basically 4 drone sightings that were basically flight deck reports, which basically airline pilots reported to having seen drones flying in directly in their approach path. So what happens as a result is that the airspace is shut down, and as a result, the cost to the economy is $1 million a minute to the Dubai economy. That's, again, for Dubai, that's basically a lot of negative publicity for its reputation as an aviation hub. There is, an impact on ease of business in aviation, and so they decided to have some sort of system in place that would address this problem. Now, there were 2 ways they could have gone about this. Is one, to have drones banned completely in Dubai, as Abu Dhabi did at that time, or to have a system that could facilitate this. A few other drivers that came into play were basically, the upcoming Expo 2020 and the use of drone applications by various government departments acting as the drivers of these applications, and also private commercial enterprise coming from all over the place, using Dubai as a test bed, a sandbox of sorts to deploy these applications. One of those was the aerial taxi by the German company Volocopter as well, who demonstrated the concept in Dubai last year. And Dubai wants to have a working aerial taxi for Expo 2020 with a point-to-point aerial taxi service, of course, as a technical feasibility concept, but it's there. And so to facilitate all of this, including food deliveries and medicine deliveries and aerial taxis, Dubai needed a system that could address that problem, or that could facilitate that industry now. So when DCAA approached us, the first thing we realized was that we couldn't solve all the challenges of UTM on day one. You can't have all your problems, all your concerns addressed without, as my friend from Unifly said, that you need to have a phased-wise approach, and that's what we did. So we called it UTM 1.0. So what do you want to have in the first implementation of a UTM system? So we started with P1 to P6 approach, phase 1 to phase 6. That's what we want to achieve in UTM 1.0, and that's what I'm going to kind of put up on the screen in shortly and take you through all of those functionalities that we were able to achieve with these phase-wise implementations. So, of course, we start with drafting regulations and publishing those to the general public and the commercial operators, publishing no-fly zones, restricted, prohibited zones, and general guidelines of what you can and can't do as an RPAS operator. Of course, we also, Dubai also then started issuing RPAS registration cards, or sort of like a license for your drone as your drone operator. So here is mine. This is my hobbyist license in Dubai to fly a DJI Spark. And then, of course, the next phase from there on was to have some sort of device that would let the NSP, the regulator, track and monitor these flights. So that's when we came up with this transponder. And this is very unique to Dubai, that no other place, to my knowledge, is using a GSM-based transponder of this size and spec that gets assigned to all commercial operators when they register their drone. And all you have to do is basically attach it to your drone, you turn the button on, and it starts transmitting the flight telemetry back to the UTM system. So what you're looking at on the screen here now is an operator's front-end login into the UTM system, where he has a list of all the drones that are registered within that entity, a list of all the pilots as well, with linkages from a single drone multiple pilots authorization, or a single pilot with multiple drones authorized for that particular pilot. And when you click on a drone detail, you see whether the insurance is valid, whether the registration is valid with the QR license plate code as well, and with all the pilots and the recent flights that have happened using that particular drone. So this on your screen now, I'm sorry about the poor contrast quality on the screen, but what's happening on the screen right now is an operator applying for his flight permission. So what he's doing is he's submitting the start date, end date, start time, end time, min and max height AGL, and the area of operation that he's going to be operating in. And when he sets all those parameters in, what happens is an estimate over there gets generated for that particular flight. So it tells the operator how much of a flight bill should he expect for that particular flight. So it's by calculating the volume of airspace that you'll be occupying for the duration of time and the proximity to various critical airspace, for example, those factors act as multipliers or metrics into what your flight estimate or bill gets generated as. So that's all good. You have the flight plan, and those blue rectangles and trapeziums and squares over there, these are basically, the UTM system will automatically calculate where the flights are happening in the next 24 hours, and they start popping them up on the screen. And once the operator is live, you see those, them operating as these drone icons here. And to address that airspace incursion problem to begin with, that was the driver of the system, was we set in our system now horizontal and vertical separation parameters between unmanned traffic and the manned traffic. What that means is basically we're saying all unmanned traffic, around the airports especially, should maintain a separation of 5-kilometer horizontal and 5,000 feet vertical separation to manned air traffic. And the system will dynamically then calculate if these parameters are being breached. So if a pilot violates the airspace and gets too close to aircraft within those parameters, we generate an alert that gets sent as an SMS to the pilot. We generate an alert on the portal itself. We generate a text message to the responsible personnel within the ATC as well, so they get alerted before the pilot is, of course, about to breach the airspace. So this kind of works as a dynamic dashboard that facilitates, separation of manned and unmanned traffic in the Emirate of Dubai. What about the operators themselves? So what we're doing for the operators is giving them access to the portal as well, because then they get situational awareness to where the manned traffic is operating. So they get a live ADS-B feed piped into their flight page, where they see where other aircraft are operating, where other drone operators are operating, and we give them the ability to recreate their flight in 3D in real time, right? So while the regulator as well, they can monitor your flight in 3 dimensions, in 3D, real-time plotting, and so does the operator. What we also give them is a comms module. So here, there's a comms module where you can send custom messages to the regulator, to the NSP, or they can send you custom messages that come as an SMS and also on the system as well, on your flight page. What that does is you can basically communicate any urgency or emergency contingency that you might have and pass those on to the ATC. Of course, all flight telemetry, because of this device, gets transmitted every 2 seconds. So you get the pitch, roll, yaw, altitude, speed, heading, lat long of that drone, and the distance covered, the speed that it's operating at, all in real time as well. So RTCM, what we call is RPAS Traffic Comms Module, Communications Module. So this is specifically kind of like like having an air traffic controller talk to you, but they can also then publish temporary flight restrictions and set a timeline on those TFRs, and those get published right there in the orange area here in Dubai. So you can set a timer on it and say we want to temporarily close this airspace, and that gets published and pushed out into the operator UTM system as well, and they get notified of the restrictions in that particular area. Any operators operating at that time will also get a notification with their green area of authorization turning red immediately as well. Okay, so far what I've talked about is cooperative UTM. So this is an operator that wants to comply willingly and put on a tracking device on his drone and let you track him. In return, you're facilitating his commercial operations. But what about the rogue guys, the guys who don't want to comply with regulations and want to cause trouble for the airports and fly in restricted airspaces? So that's when I started with saying that you can't solve the problem on day one, but now we've gotten to that point where we have a legal basis for all commercial operators to operate within, a legal, technical, commercial basis that serves their function, that serves their business. And now what we've done is, starting with the airports, to demonstrate the capability of detecting drones with 2 of the leading detection vendors, D-Drone and L3. And what they're doing now is putting this RF network, sorry, I skipped a slide, I should go back. So they've put up these RF antennas around the airport. So what they're doing is detecting drone activity around the airport, and what that's in turn doing is feeding the data into our system. And we can do three things now. We can then basically detect, we can then verify or validate, and then we can basically discriminate between an unauthorized and an authorized flight as well. So telling the ATC what's good and what's bad traffic in the air, and perhaps future integration with law enforcement that would then allow them to mitigate that threat eventually. So far, again, we talked unmanned air traffic management, but in Dubai it's been a bit unique in the sense that and this was borrowed a bit from the Madrid GUTMA conference this year, where they called UTM a unified traffic management system instead of just unmanned. So what we're doing in Dubai is we put these tracking devices on hot air balloons as well. And we are tracking hot air balloons in real time, of course, and those guys go up to 4,000 feet altitude. And given the network propagation in Dubai is pretty fantastic, you've got 100% coverage, we're able to track hot air balloons as well. So which is quite nice to have, where you're now having hot air balloons, drone traffic, and just in October 2018, which is this month, we tracked the skydivers as well. So they got a tracker attached to their wrist with a Velcro strap, and they were doing skydiving all across Dubai, and we were tracking and monitoring them over the UTM system through the GSM network. So this is not only reliant on the GSM network, the system. We have other forms of tracking devices that we can input into the system, such as the ADSB receivers as well. And we are obviously moving on to having direct flight control integration, or just using your mobile app to transmit your flight telemetry into the UTM system. Now, extensions into the UTM system. What do we have? We have an analytics engine as well now that allows Dubai to, on a daily, weekly, or a monthly basis, then study the impact of unmanned traffic on various stakeholders within Dubai. So what they're doing is assessing the heat maps of various types of operations that are happening. Where are government operators operating? Where is commercial operators? What types of jobs are they performing? Whether they're more surveillance flights, or construction monitoring flights, or aerial filming flights, for example. And then, what type of violations get created on day in, day out? So do we have proximity to air traffic violations, or do you have breach of boundary where operators are going outside of the area of approval, or are they breaching altitude? Are they going higher than they applied permissions for? So all of that data, and then the registry data sets as well. How many pilots applied this month? How many flights happened this month? How many flights people applied for and didn't actually fly? All of that data is now being kind of analyzed in the system to better plan and manage the airspace, the unmanned airspace, and unify this overall and study the impact to various stakeholders as well. So that's the analytics engine, and currently Exponent has two implementations live, one with the DCAA and the other one in Italy with ENAV, who is the NSP, national NSP in Italy. And they are using the system for beyond visual line of sight flights for a period of 1 year starting October this month. And so our system is in place in these two places. And with that, I conclude my presentation. Thank you very much for your patience and time, and have a great event. Looking forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Hi, Han. David just asked me to tell you that this afternoon during the coffee break, there will be a demonstration, I think, of your system mounted on the bamboo drone. So this will take place this afternoon during the coffee break. So don't miss it. Okay, so for me it was really interesting to see how all the pieces of the puzzles are slowly getting together. We see that nowadays it's possible to mount devices on drones in order to be able to see those drones. There are people that are proposing to put antennas more or less everywhere on the countryside in order to have an eye on the low-flying devices. And all the stakeholders are, it seems, being able to get an interface to that system. So being able to see the drones, You think of airspace managers, there are city airspace managers, now more and more people in the airports, but also all the flying devices operators can see all traffics and react and avoid mid-air collisions and synchronize all the traffic. So I think this is very impressive, and that was, I can tell you, not the case a few years ago, that we could call up a few service companies and install such a system. I'm quite confident as well that what is now being driven by the need of drones and accompany the increase of density of drones in the airspace, providers and all the needs, all the stakeholders in this area. It's called GUTMA for Global UTM Association. And I encourage you, if you want to know more about UTM and how you can interact with the other players, because I think one thing that is very important is that all of those services basically interact with each other, are compatible with each other, so that we don't end up with closed systems per country or per region. So GUTMA, keep that in mind if you want to get involved in that area. So with that, I would like to ask you to thank again our 4 speakers for their really nice presentation.
Thank you very much, Jean-Christophe. Please give a hand for the moderator of this session. Did a wonderful job. And just to add on to what he was saying, years ago, you could not have a mobile phone and also track. Right now, if you have an iPhone or an Android phone, you can have an application and you can submit a request to fly a drone, and it tells you what you can do, what you cannot do, if there are any NOTAMs that have been circulated for you to be aware of. It also allows and then notifies you that yes, within this radius you can fly, here you cannot fly. So digital information is advancing at a rapid pace, and we need to keep up with it. And it's quite a very neat tool. So after stating that, we go to the next session, or the last session before we have our break. This is on the performance base. It's about regulations. And the speakers will be speaking, and at the end of the speakers speaking, the Tanzania Civil Aviation Authority will come up with also a statement or presentation. It's their choice, just to give their forward-looking thinking or forward-thinking looking, whatever it is, what they're thinking for the future and what they intend to do. And for that, for this session, it's going to be moderated by Harrison Wolf. And Harrison, karibu sana. You all know about his bio. He washed his clothes for you this morning. His suitcase is still somewhere coming in. But please, come on top, So I know they're clean and he washed, so that this thing. So take it on.
Thank you. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Again, I get to my casual wear, courtesy of Rock City Mall. So thank you all for bearing with me. As we spoke a little bit yesterday about performance-based regulations and regulations in general, I think the conversations we had after that were eye-opening for all of us. We're really beginning to share across civil aviation authorities a lot of good information, and it's very, very positive. Before I begin, I want to say thank you to the World Bank, to our Tanzanian hosts, as well as to those logistics people who have made this really effective and made us all feel very welcome. So if you could put your hands together to thank everybody there for logistic support, it's been really fantastic. The first person I'd like to introduce today is Captain Clifford Sweet. I don't need to go through his bio again. He hosted earlier. He's been, I think, famous for everybody here in his work. So Cliff, if you want to come up and tell us a little bit about what the World Food Program is doing and how you view the regulatory environment involving. Thanks.
All right, good morning, everybody. And as Harrison mentioned, what I'll do is walk you through a little bit from WFP aviation side, and the scope changes a little bit from what we've been talking about so far. So on this first slide, what I sincerely hope is that next year on the index, on the legend on the bottom left, you see some of our land, sea routes, and our air routes. What I sincerely hope is that by June, when we have our fly event, that we actually have a UAS RPAS route to add for you. So a little bit of an overview on WFP. You know, our country office is well represented here, and I'm not going to go into a whole lot about a lot of things we do, but what I want to focus on is where we're focusing on RPAS. So this is not a typo. What our interest is in a 1.5 metric ton payload. Again, that's payload. That's not weight of the RPAS. So that's what we're focusing on right now. We're working with the state and the region through several items, and I'll go through that process. But we also have a coordination cell that we're working on for other UAS and RPAS matters. So some of those things include aerial assessments, also something called HAPS, high altitude platform or pseudo satellites or pseudo satellites. You might know that as Google Loon. Mobile towers, we utilize those in Puerto Rico where AT&T put up some connectivity for us. Delivery of smaller items, we have a couple of projects we're working on that I also hope to announce, but weren't just quite ready. So we're working on several small cargo items. We will talk about a risk-based approach. So how do we plan on getting that larger RPAS up in the air, considering safety primarily? And again, that leads right to that large cargo delivery and then future engagements. So considering regulations, a basis for regulations around the world is Annex 2. That's known as Rules of the Road. But, you know, in teaching drone workshops, both for ICAO and for WFP around the world, sometimes some of the drone or UAS pilots aren't very familiar. So the best analogy I can use is rules of the road. You know, it's a separation, a method to fly, and quite simply avoiding other aircraft and respecting people and property on the ground. So those are very, very simple, high-level view. But also, Annex 2 talks about the requirement for a special authorization. And if you're interested, if you get into Annex 2, go straight to Appendix 4 in the back. That's all unmanned aircraft. But another item that we use, so I'm going to kind of go through our toolkit now that we utilize to build this authorization when we special authorization. It's 4 pages with, I think, about 7 pages of instructions. It's not super complicated, but for somebody that's never done one, it would be a good starting point for a CONOPS or an operational risk assessment. And SMS, not going to do the deep dive into SMS here. Obviously, there's not time. But obviously, it's a backbone for the risk-based approach. And the main thing I want to point out here is, other than the process being a loop, but that the operational approval, and so our operation, to the best of our ability, if the state does not have drone regulations or RPAS regulations, is to go in and take the ICAO annexes, best practices from around the world, and use their manned rules. So at the end of the day, when we all agree on the best path forward, they will add also a set of conditions and limitations to say, yeah, Cliff, we really like all those things, but we still want these 22 things, and those are usually types of mitigations. So at the end of the day, the regulator, and that might be an air navigation service provider, or it might be the Civil Aviation Authority itself, will accept that risk before we go forward. They say, yeah, with all these things you've generated here, we're comfortable that this project can fly safely. This is a picture of an actual operation. The little corridor there is not unlike a UTM project. This project utilized something called an ALTRAV, Alpha Lima Tango Romeo Victor. It's what NASA uses for a space shuttle launch, or Edwards, several of the other launch sites. So that little corridor there is only a mile wide and 400 feet in altitude, but it can move. So why lock an airspace up in this area? There's a lot of man traffic going up and down the coast. Also, it was in a very defense-sensitive area. So why lock it up if we're not using it? It can actually move in real time as the drone would go offshore. UTM, we just had the professionals talk to you about UTM, but one thing I do want to highlight is unmanned aircraft, and I would ask all of the operators here and the civil aviation authorities, what is your method of detect and avoid? So I heard the discussion, I heard ADS-B, I heard talk about transponders. Are any of those TSO'd, or does it have a technical standard order? And you might just say, Cliff, I don't know. But, you might end up in a state where they go, well, is that approved? Has it been through the certification process? So whatever method you use, and the UTM is a great one. So creating that route, maybe it's just segregating airspace, so technically no one else can come in, but it's a consideration. So one of the other pieces that we would utilize would be a flight plan. This is actual ICAO flight plan. So in that, we're now assuming, this would assume that a state maybe is in the process of creating the regulations, and they're saying, well, Cliff, we still don't have them all vetted yet. But we would bring this ICAO flight plan and say, let's use this. And, these are just a few of the small things. This particular aircraft is painted this color in for a reason. It's called conspicuity, because many of the drones or RPAS UAS are stealthy by design. So when you look at one straight on, you're not seeing them very well. So in a turn, both the bottom and the top are very visible. Some will have very high visibility lighting, but for a lot of the electrical battery ones, powered units, you're putting an immediate drain on the battery that it can't sustain. So, it just depends on what kind of conspicuity possibilities you have. And can you use ADS-B transponder? Those are just other methods. And so where does that get us? What we're actually talking about here is our goal at WFP. Again, we have a litany of use cases we're looking for, but ultimately, in the very near future, we're actually looking to operate with this RPAS. Have the video, please. So we're just about wrapping here. I've just got another slide. So again, one thing I want to make clear, WFP is not an operator. So we actually have the operator here, Astral Aviation from Nairobi that we have a letter of interest signed to operate this flyox for us in the coming days, hopefully, or coming months. So I just want to make that clear. But WFP, our role is to serve as facilitators with our operators, so they have a whole protocol and process. And our duty is to collaborate with other UN members, other civil aviation authorities to enable operations. Whoops. Can you advance that, please? Thank you. And that's it. Just one comment on the slide here. So this is a picture from the Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C., the Udvar Hazy Museum. And the reason I have the slide there, not only because the Scan Eagle was inducted into that museum, I think it was a year and a half ago, but the essence of it is, according to Annex 2 and rules in this particular state, that Scan Eagle is an aircraft, and all manned rules apply. And the entity flying it, be it a man or woman, is a pilot. So again, rules apply to them. Thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Cliff. I think that we can all agree that this type of operation is something that the world needs to deliver goods and deliver a new form of logistics to environments that remotely piloted aircraft really can embrace. I also want to take a moment to identify what he talked about with performance-based regulations, because ultimately that's what we'll be talking about this afternoon in the regulatory environment. It's one of the reasons that we are so grateful to have so many Civil Aviation Authority representatives, as well as to have the responsible hosting here as well. The next up person is Philip Dawson. At least I hope so. Is that their next slide? Perfect. All right, so we'll have Philip Dawson. He's the policy officer working on RPAS and UAS at the International Civil Aviation Organization, a specialized agency of the United Nations. Is anybody here not familiar with ICAO? That's what I thought. Philip is working with civil aviation authorities and international organizations on the development and implementation of international standards for aviation safety. As a lawyer by trade, Phil has advised governments on the development of privacy and data protection policies and has acted as a public policy advisor to advanced technology startups. Phil, thank you very much.
Habari Yasubuhi. Good morning. I guess we're still morning. So I want to also just take a moment to thank the organizers and the hosts of the Lake Victoria Challenge for inviting ICAO to participate. ICAO is incredibly enthusiastic about this initiative, and to be able to participate directly in helping progress and catalyze harmonization activities in this region and across the continent is something that's very exciting, and we hope to be able to continue to support you in this effort. Over here. Okay, so all of you have heard of ICAO, which is a specialized agency of the United Nations. Our member states are very familiar with their activities, but I'm going to bet that not everybody here has the same degree of familiarity. So a couple things about ICAO. ICAO has been around for almost 75 years, established in 1944 through the signing of the Convention on International Civil Aviation, also known as the Chicago Convention. This is an international treaty that addresses all aspects of civil aviation safety and is actually binding on 192 contracting states. In addition to the articles of the convention, we have annexes to the convention. It's actually quite helpful that Cliff went before me because he touched on some of those annexes and the standards that they contain, which become, with a level of 70% implementation, the aviation legislation and regulations that we find across the world. So ICAO, by virtue of its mandate, is the global facilitator for international harmonization and interoperability for aviation. And harmonization and interoperability are more and more important when we're speaking about an industry that is rapidly progressing, like the drone industry. So at ICAO, this is our typology of unmanned aircraft, and we deal primarily with two categories. Cliff mentioned the remotely piloted aircraft, which we were developing standards for. Those are RPAs that are capable of being integrated into non-segregated airspace. They fly international operations under instrument flight rules. And then we also more recently have been working on some guidance material for small drones, even small drones operating domestically. I just want to emphasize another point that Cliff concluded with, which is that unmanned aircraft are aircraft. So at ICAO, we try not to use the term drone too often, even though it's commonly used, because we try and hammer home the point that drones are actually aircraft. When you are flying a drone, you're actually flying an aircraft that has to comply with aviation legislation and regulations, which can be an onerous process, but it's in the best interest of aviation safety. So we have two approaches at ICAO to developing standards and guidance material for these two broad classes of unmanned aircraft. For RPAS, we adopt the full regulatory approach that we adopt for manned aviation. These are the aircraft that have to comply with rules that are essentially the same as manned aviation. And we've been working on this for about 10 years. It can be a lengthy process, and there are certain standards that are still going to be adopted in the next 2 to 5 years. But the focus and the priority has been to develop standards for requirements to initiate international operations, so certificates of airworthiness, the RPAS operator certificate, and remote pilot license and training. Also working on standards for the command and control data link, the C2 link, detect and avoid capabilities, and safety management for RPAS. This is on the bottom right. You see the manual on RPAS. I hope all of you have been able to get your hands on that, but that was something that came out in 2015. We're in the process of updating that as the standards develop, as the standard making process develops. Okay, so for other UAS, and particularly small unmanned aircraft, we've had to adopt a more flexible approach to keep up with the demand for guidance. And in 2016, our assembly, so the 192 member states of ICAO, instructed the organization to begin work developing guidance to harmonize national regulations. So while we're not developing international standards for drones, the principles of aviation regulation and safety apply. So we will still be talking about airworthiness, still be talking about rules of the air, licensing and training of pilots, and safety management, but of course this will be scaled to the level of risk and operation, as Cliff mentioned. We adopt an operation-centric, risk-based approach. So instead of talking about certificates of airworthiness, we might be talking about something like a consumer product certification, set of separation standards. We talk about distance from structures, license versus operational limitations and conditions, and all of this taking into account the risk to third parties, recognizing that an 80,000 kilogram aircraft is different from a small drone of a couple kilograms or 10 or 25 kilograms. Here are some of the initiatives that we've undertaken for small drones since 2016, which actually Cliff was a big part of leading before he went to WFP. So we have established a UAS advisory group with representation from member states, international organizations, and also directly from industry to develop a toolkit that contains some of the tools that Cliff had in his slide, which you can see are being used effectively. So we're talking about authorization forms, things like that. So we have general guidance for national regulations, best practices and lessons learned from many states, practical examples, and you can find those on the ICAO UAS toolkit. If you just Google those words, you'll find it. Otherwise, we've been focusing on UTM. Harmonization, interoperability of UTM is going to be very important. As we see today, there are many concepts of UTM out there. There are many systems, there are many platforms, there are going to be service providers that plug into these different platforms, and a key element to ensuring aviation safety, but also the efficient growth of the UTM world will be interoperability. So we've been developing a framework for UTM that focuses on the core components of UTM. So that would mean registration, identification, tracking, communication systems, geofencing-like systems, and more recently, we've been looking at the UTM-ATM interface, how UTM is separate but complementary to ATM, and what might progressive integration of the two systems look like. So on that point, the first edition of the UTM framework will be out later this year, should be published on the ICAO website in December. So that is something to look forward to. These will be the core principles focusing on registration, identification, tracking, communications, and geofencing-like systems. Okay, leveraging UAS in humanitarian and development activities while ensuring aviation safety. That's really what we're here to talk about. And ICAO is very excited about all the initiatives underway, and we really hope that we can participate and partner with you to continue to leverage the experience that is being cultivated in this room to develop international guidance material. And from mapping operations for emergency preparedness, disaster response, or even land surveys to drone delivery, which I think is the focus of our regulatory track later today, we're very enthusiastic about the benefits that unmanned aircraft can bring to communities. And we need to work together to make sure that this is done in the while maintaining levels of safety. And this is an interdisciplinary approach. So it's important that we identify all the different interfaces that these operations intersect with in the public health communities, the emergency response communities, and we bring them into the conversation. Because at the end of the day, safety goes hand in hand with economic development. Growth in this sector is going to depend on safe operations. Without one incident, one issue could derail this whole project, and we really hope that is not going to happen. And if we work together, I'm confident that it will not. Because, and then I'm going to show a slide here that you've probably seen in the last week. Because we could see some of the risks to manned aviation, but also public safety. This is the responsibility that civil aviation authorities have to ensure aviation safety and safety to the public. Okay, so before you get to your mission, you're transporting your drone by air to a mission site. What do you do with your lithium batteries? I had some conversations with people as we spent the better part of the day at the Dar es Salaam airport on Sunday about what you're doing. How do you transport your drones when you're going to a different mission site, whether it's by air in the same country or internationally? And I heard there are a lot of complications with that. But one is lithium batteries. What do I do about my drone's lithium batteries? So, especially as the aviation community has come to a consensus that lithium batteries present a hazard to make it difficult to suppress or extinguish fires on board an aircraft and reduce time, which can reduce time for the safe landing at a diversion airport. So these are some of the hazards associated with lithium batteries. And the trick is, how do we manage these? Well, at ICAO we have some guidance. On this. So here it is. If your lithium batteries are contained in or packed with drones, they must be transported as cargo. I think we all know that because when we're traveling with laptops, we have to abide by these rules. You've got a 5 kilogram limit on passenger aircraft, that's per package, 35 kilogram limit on cargo aircraft, and if you're transporting batteries only, that's actually forbidden as cargo on passenger aircraft. What about drone delivery of blood, vaccines, and medical specimens? One of the speakers this morning alluded to some of the hazards associated with these types of operations. So Annex 19 at ICAO contains standards that are applicable to international civil aircraft operations, but they are recommended for domestic aircraft operations as well. Okay, so they contain, there's also technical instructions that provide for detailed provisions for the safe transport of infectious substances, biological products, including vaccines and medical specimens. And the issue is ensuring the viability of these products so that they can be used and fit for purpose on arrival, and that when things happen, for instance, if procedures are not followed or the drone crashes, then you have some mitigation plans in place and you make sure that you're not leading to the spread of disease rather than preventing disease. All this comes back to safety management, okay? So we identify the hazards associated with some of these operations, and states have a responsibility in Annex 19 to maintain maintain a process to assess and manage safety risks. Okay, so these are some of the considerations that will come up in the course of the management of your operations. This is an international framework that will be applicable to RPAS in the international context, but the principles are good to remember and do apply for domestic operations. And Annex 19 also requires operators, not just states, but requires operators to implement an SMS framework. I'll just show you what that framework looks like. We're not going to get into all the details, but you can see on the board three of the components that I've highlighted. Coordination of emergency response planning, that goes back to identifying all the interfaces of your operation and coordination that is required to ensure a safe outcome. Hazard identification, safety risk assessment and management. And I need to end, but I want to make a comment on prescriptive and performance-based regulations, because that's the topic of our session, and we'll be looking at that in more detail during our regulatory track. ICAO just had a conference in Chengdu, and we had a session during the RPAS 3 symposium entitled Performance-Based Regulations, Are States Ready? And we had 4 or 5 states from around the world share their perspectives. And there was a mixed outcome. So I wanted to share some of those lessons and then refer you to some guidance material that we have. So just as a recap, although I guess Harrison went into this yesterday, but prescriptive regulations are standards set for compliance. They're very straightforward. What to do, how to do, what to do it with. They can provide for certainty, which can actually facilitate a harmonized approach, which is beneficial. Some issues are that or criticisms that they can be rigid, ill-adapted to the rapid pace of technological change. Performance-based regulations, they focus on an acceptable level of safety performance or acceptable threshold of safety performance and a means for verifying that the performance was met. They're flexible, encourage innovation, and a proactive approach to policymaking, which brings huge benefits to the drone industry. Some criticisms, they can be vague, they're hard to enforce, and they actually put a greater onus on regulators to collaborate with industry and develop focused guidance material to establish levels of safety performance and the means for ensuring that the performance was met. And often this is done on a case-by-case basis, which can complicate harmonization or even lead to lag times in regulatory approvals. So maybe this might not be such a satisfying conclusion, but a hybrid approach is recommended, okay? And of course, the devil is in the details, because the difficulty is identifying which components work best with a prescriptive model and which components work best with a performance model. And I think it's only through collaboration with regulators and industry that we can determine that balance. And I invite you to just check out the manual on RPAS, and especially the safety management manual, which goes into some of the discussions on performance-based regulations. So final thoughts. Unmanned industry is evolving at an unprecedented pace, especially in this area. And unmanned aviation brings challenges, unforeseen challenges to the traditional aviation regulatory system. Harmonized performance-based regulations can support the growth of innovation in the industry. Regular information exchange between ICAO, states, and industry is necessary throughout this process. And the humanitarian benefits of these operations will be dependent on a safe, effective, and harmonized regulatory framework. And I would just encourage you to continue to work together, continue to keep ICAO in the loop so we can progress these harmonization activities together. Thank you very much.
First, I'd like to thank ICAO for being here, and Phil, that was a phenomenal presentation on performance-based regulations, the difference between a prescriptive approach, performance approach, and I think what we're all figuring in this out is that it sort of requires that hybrid approach, which takes a lot of intentionality, a lot of thought, but ultimately will be supportive of innovative approaches and solutions while protecting safety in the air, which I know is all of our goal here today. We have 3 more speakers. The next up is Andrew Mutabarak. He's the head of quality and safety for Rwanda Civil Aviation Authority, as well as the safety program coordinator. Prior to this, he was an air traffic controller, air traffic manager, and the safety manager for air navigation services. He additionally serves on the UAS Technical Advisory Committee and has 21 years of experience in aviation. And I just want to say that he's a good friend of mine and from Rwanda who's doing a lot of really good work there. So Andrew, if you would come up.
Morning, everyone. My name is Andrew. As he just said, I'm the head of quality and safety Rwanda Civil Aviation Authority, and I'm here to present Rwanda's regulation on UAS. Well, the outline of what we are going to talk about is a brief background on US regulation in Rwanda, the first steps, the Part 27, which is our regulation on UAS in our regulations, the content of Part 27, and the applicability. Well, in 2015, Rwanda started developing US regulations, and there was a reason for this. Our leadership actually took the lead in trying to embrace the drone technology. Told RCA to start thinking about regulating drones. At that time, there was no even any operator for drones. But there were some factors as to why the government of Rwanda thought about starting to regulate. One is that US technology was actually emerging everywhere, and they thought we can be caught by surprise finding drones flying in the country without being regulated. So they said it's better to start preparing for that. The other one was that the drones are not expensive. Everyone is capable of buying a drone. So there was this likelihood that we'll have a lot of drones in the country. Then, many institutions started also talking about wanting to use drones in certain services. And RCA has the responsibility to safeguard manned aviation. That's why we are there. Those were the main driving factors for us to start thinking about developing regulations for UAS. So the first steps, at that time, and even today, no ICAO SAPs on regulating drones. Rwanda CAA tried to develop its regulations based on best practices from other countries. The European Aviation Safety Agency, they had started developing also some regulations. We used the material of JALUS. I think many people are familiar with that. And then we said we want also to try this and see how it works. So Rwanda CAA had to engage major stakeholders, a navigation service provider who would eventually have the challenge once the drones are brought into the airspace. And then we have our regional safety oversight organization, CASOA, that was also guiding us on how we can go about this. So this is Part 27 of our regulations. In 2015, we published first regulation. I just want to tell you that because of this emerging technology, we have no expertise on how actually to follow up on everything about them, but we were trying to put basic control mechanisms to ensure that nothing happens, but we continue to learn. So there is this flexibility for reviewing and amending regulations as a need may come. So 2015, we have first regulations. And 2017, we had another one. 2018, we have another one. So there are different versions. So what we have today is part 27. So what did we use? Since ICAO has no SAPs, we are talking about performance-based approach that we have just had. And specifically, we are talking about specific operation risk assessment, because you want to analyze every operation individually. So what do we look at in this? We look at the type of UAS that you are looking at, the type of operation that you want to have, and the area where this operation will take place. These are the three main areas that we have to look at when we are doing this risk-based regulation. We have, as I told you, our leadership is very much supportive in this, and we have a legal backing for regulating this. And also, in our law, there are provisions for enforcement of regulations. So the content of Part 27, which actually anyone, if you want, you can go to the RCA website and get this regulation. So we have general provisions, we have classification and registration of UAS, we classify them, and also every drone that is, or UAS that is in Rwanda has to be registered. And then operation of UAS in Rwanda. As I said, we have to ensure that a specific operation risk assessment is done. So in this we have the basic, specific, and complex. Those are the classifications that we have in our regulation for the UAS that we have in Rwanda. Then we have security and privacy provisions in that regulation. And then for details of all these, we have appendices that we keep putting as we deem it necessary. So, these are the questions. What? All US types have to be regulated. Where? At entry into Rwandan territory. Who will be regulated? A Rwandan or a foreigner who wants to operate in Rwanda? When? All time. Why? To continue to safeguard and control airspace users. How? Risk-based approach until ICAO SAPs are available. My presentation was as short as that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Andrew. Oh, don't forget this. Here you saw a direct implementation of performance-based regulation from Rwanda, so thank you for that, and thank you for being here. Our next presentation is from Ms. Chikondi Chadza. She's a senior air traffic controller for the Malawi Department of Civil Aviation. She's been in aviation industry since 2010 and includes 3 years training as an air traffic controller. She holds a Bachelor's of Science in Education from Mzuzu University in Malawi. Is Ms. Chadza here? There she is. And as she walks up, we'll have one more presenter afterwards, after Ms. Chadza. And so don't everybody rush up for lunch right after, and I think then we'll have an announcement from George as well.
Good morning, everybody. I am Chikondi Jadza, as I've already been introduced, from Malawi, a senior air traffic control officer. Before I do my presentation, I just wanted to acknowledge the presence of my Director of Civil Aviation in Malawi and the Chief Flight Operations Officer, who are also here. And my presentation is on how, like I said, I work in air traffic as an air traffic controller. So I will present on how ATC interacts with the RPS that are operating in Malawi. Okay. Malawi is a landlocked country. That's a country profile that I'm going to present to you, with a population of about 18 million people as of 2017. Some of the things that we do have in Malawi, we also have a beautiful lake, different kind of species of fish, game reserves. You should visit Malawi one day. Now I'll go to the previous drone use cases in Malawi. Malawi has been also in the forefront in the introduction of drones in Africa, and we have used these drones in integrating the RPS into HIV and health supply chain management. This was a project which was pioneered by UNICEF in Malawi. Apart from that, we have also used the drones in flood assessments with the RPS and integration in the national disasters, and how we were preparing ourselves to come up with the solutions to combat that problem that we did have. Apart from that, the humanitarian drone testing corridor, which was the first of its kind in Africa, was introduced in Malawi. And also we did the Lilongwe mapping urban sanitation. There is a picture showing the drones that was flown first. Should be in, that was in 2016. That was a project done by UNICEF, and it was the first one that was done in Malawi. And our policy now in Malawi, what's our policy in Malawi in the drones? Okay, drones operating in Malawi are regulated through flexible ways or flexible means, whereby if you have an operator who would like to operate drones in Malawi, and they come up with their application that they'd like to operate drones in Malawi, we as in aviation authority, what we do is we check out what they'd like to do. We do ask the operator, like, what's your plan? Where do you want to go, or what do you want to do exactly? Then we do assess the kind of hazards that may come up after maybe they have given us their plan. Then we do see how we're going to mitigate those problems throughout the operation. Then that's when we as the regulator or we as the authority, we can either say yes to the operators or even say no to the operators. That is now the map of Malawi. That map is showing two different kinds of boundaries. We do have the political boundaries, which are the boundaries that demarcates countries, and we also have what we call the FIR boundaries, which is the flight information region. The reason why I came up with this, the map of Malawi, is especially the last part, where it's showing we are in Malawi, but the FIR boundary, which is in green lines, is showing that the lower part is not Malawian airspace. So what I wanted to say is, for example, if the drone users or the drone operators would like to operate in Malawi, and they do not tell us that they're operating, and they'll be operating right here, down here, thinking they're in Malawi, that would be very wrong, because this part of the airspace belongs to Mozambican airspace. So we do urge the operators to come and tell us exactly what their plan is, where exactly they're going to operate when they're operating in Malawi, so that we tell them the exact places that they can go and where they cannot go, so that they do not infringe the airspace of other FIR boundaries or FIR users. Now I'm going to talk about the Kasungu drone testing corridor, which, as I already said, was the first in Africa. After seeing that drones have been in Malawi, we've used the drones for humanitarian purposes, and that is, we've done that in conjunction with Malawi government under the Department of Supervision and the Ministry of Health and UNICEF. We did come up with the corridor, which is located about, it is located within the controlled airspace. Our drone corridor is within the controlled airspace. Even though it is within the controlled airspace, we made sure that it does not conflict with the arrival paths and the departure paths of the arriving traffic that we do have at the main international airport in Malawi. Now I'm going to talk about the relationship between ATC and the drone corridor. What happens in the drone corridor, and what do we as ATC do when activities are taking place in the drone corridor? One thing that we always make sure to take place is that whatever the activities that are happening at the drone corridor, the users must always maintain a listening watch on the radio frequency that is in use at that particular time. Because anything can happen, even though maybe they have told us we're going to operate in this area. If something happens, they need to maintain a listening watch so that they know exactly what is happening. And also information about the drone operations in the corridor is passed by ATC to man traffic. We may have other traffic which may be operating near or around the corridors. So we'd like to make sure that we are always informed of the activities so that we inform our man traffic whenever they're going that side, what they should expect or what is there, what they should expect when they're operating around that area. Apart from that, the drone operators must also call the control tower before launching operations at all times. That is to say, you may receive a communication from the drone users that we're going to launch our operations at 11 o'clock. But you know something may happen, they do not launch the operations at 11. And you're expecting something is happening or they are doing the operations maybe between 11 and 12. However, we would like them, at the moment, they may tell us in advance we do our operations at this time. But the moment they would like to start doing their operations, they should also tell us by phone or by any means of communication that right now we are doing our operations. That is one of the things that the drone operators, when they're operating at the corridor, should always do. Apart from that, we as the Civil Aviation Authority, what we do is whenever activities are also taking place at the corridor, NOTAMs are issued to notify all the operators within that airspace that at this corridor or at this specific radius, in this area, there are drone activities that are taking place. Now, the next, I'm going to talk about the future interaction of ATC with the drones in Malawi. As we all know, drones are increasingly becoming part of our day-to-day lives. So we do expect, as ATC in Malawi, we do expect that the number of drones that are operating now in Malawi in the near future, that we're going to have high numbers of drones operating in Malawi. And with that, we as ATC, we know we're going to have a lot of work and we have to do our part so that whenever we have this number of drones, whenever they're going to increase the numbers, they do not overtake us. So we would like to make sure that there is integration between unmanned traffic management into the controlled airspace or into the manned traffic that we do have. Also, having radar now at Kamuzu International Airport, that is going to help us to maybe track some of these drones, especially if in the near future, if this drone technology is going to enable the drones to be able to have the ADS-B or the transponders that are going to help us to track them whenever they are flying either in the controlled airspace or in the drone corridors or wherever they're going to be flying, that radar or the having of the ADS-B or the transponders in the drones is going to help us to track them at all times and provide the right separation or the safety measures that we can so that they are not hazardous to us. That is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Chadza. So before we finish today, I'd like to introduce, oh, it just went away. Mr. Redemptus from the Tanzania Civil Aviation Authority, who has volunteered to come and give a briefing for us, outlining the work here, as well as what's so unique about the Lake Victoria Challenge in terms of performance-based regulations and authorizations. So Redemptus, my good friend from the Drone Innovators Network, as well in Zurich, please join us. Thanks. Thank you very much.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I don't have a presentation actually because I'm an intruder in this session. And I'll give just a brief of what TCAA does in regulating drones. And I'll start by stating about the mission, TCAA mission. That the mission of TCAA actually it is to ensure safety, security, efficiency, and regulatory compliance by providing effective oversight and efficient air navigation services. And we shall do this while maintaining quality, protecting the environment, and safeguarding the interest of consumers and the public. Okay, from our mission then, and here comes the drones operations. That despite the UAS potential threat to airspace users and the underlying grounds, but we find that they do have actually safety, security, economic and social values. Then, okay, after that we said, we have to regulate them. Should we stop them? No, we have to regulate them because there are values in the operation of drones. For the time being, we don't have the regulations. The regulations are in draft. They are awaiting signature by the minister so that they can be promulgated. So by then, we started by issuing a public notice that all drones operators should get approvals from the authority. And after issuing that public notice, and then we issued an aeronautical information circular. And that aeronautical information circular required all drone operators to apply to the authority, and there was an application form which they could fill, and then we consider the applications and issue the approvals. I'll not say so many things here, but okay, we shall promulgate the regulations soon, and operators will be required to register the drones, and they'll be required to get, for commercial operators, will be required to get the RPAS operator's certificate, and also depending on the complexity of operations, the drones will be issued with these certificates of airworthiness. I was very much amused, can I say amused, by the presentation by the ICAO expert. That, okay, what ICAO is doing and what guidance has been given by ICAO so far. And actually, this is what we used actually in developing the regulations. We took regulations from Rwanda, and there were also draft regulations from Kenya. We combined them, and with the assistance of CASOA, we came up with the harmonized draft regulations, and those are the regulations which are going to be promulgated soon. And on the issue of the performance-based regulations, actually we are also trying to be in line. We have draft SMS regulations. They'll be also be published together with the drones regulations. And in the SMS regulations, we are required to implement the SSP, State Safety Program. And with the State Safety Program, that's where we shall be working on the performance-based regulations, including regulating these unmanned aircraft systems. What I can say about the authority is that, okay, the authority will continue learning and applying the best practices from other authorities and the industry. And I've said before, promulgate the regulations and also make amendments as necessary, and as well as organizing sensitization and consultative meetings. And we shall look into easing the process of authorization without compromising safety and security. And, well, we are always learning, both the regulator, the operators, and also the manufacturers and designers. It is all about teamwork. Let's start with what we have now. We've had a lot of presentations, and our common goal is to ensure safe, secure, and efficient operations between unmanned aircraft systems and manned aircraft systems. That's all. Thank you for listening.
Well, that's it for our track today. I think what you've heard is an inspirational alignment around performance-based regulations. I'd like to thank the international community of World Food Program and International Civil Aviation Organization, our esteemed speakers, our hosts, the City of Mwanza, and thank you all for being here and listening to our track here. And for those of you going to be here in the afternoon in the regulatory track, there will be a lot less speaking and a lot more workshops where we learn from one another. So I encourage you to come there, and we'll have a little handout for you as well there. I now invite George Mulamula back to the stage to tell us a little bit about what's going on in the next hour or so. Thank you.
Thank you, Harrison. The next thing is food. Please clap for Harrison. For doing such a wonderful job. As we leave here, we are going to go have lunch. Lunch is going to be served in the same area where we had lunch yesterday. There will be no flights today, but then there is one, not the normal flights that we're planning. And this is a test of the BV loss. That's beyond virtual line of sight. We want to test that so it will fly to the island, and then hopefully it will be streamed back to us. We will see when that is landing. So that will happen then. At 1:15, for those who want to go test and learn more about the details of drones, we kindly request you to go to the table where this exhibition is. There's a Tanzania Flying Lab table there. Do register and know that transport will leave at 1:15 to go roughly about 3-4 kilometers away, so that you can spend an hour and learn in details about drones, how they operate and what needs to be done. So there's a BV loss flight. We'll see how it happens depending on weather. Hopefully you'll be able to see it while you're having lunch. That's the only flight that's going to be done. 1:15 to go out for those who want to go learn in details, even touch the drones that are there. When we come back at 1:30, as we know, there are 3 tracks now. We are going to be in our different tracks. The regulation track is going to be held in the boardroom, the ground floor conference room. That's where it's going to be held. The technology track, and that is being led by Harrison Wolf, that you already know about. So then, regulation I'm talking about. Yeah, regulation, and it's going to be on the ground floor downstairs. At the reception, you go to facing the reception to the left, you enter there. The technology track is going to be led by Jean Christophe, I think, whom, Jean, he stepped out? Okay. Yeah, he was the one, the Sensifly gentleman. So it's going to be held in this room, so for those who are interested. And then the infrastructure track, which depends on those who went to the island, in case you didn't go but want to join, is going to be in the boardroom below this floor. There's another room there, and that's where it will be held at 13:30. So with that now, I think we're ready to break unless there's a question, a cue, clarification, or anything that has been done. Otherwise, I wish to thank you for being attentive, for being here, for listening. I hope it's been a learning experience to understand and use the lunchtime to network, exchange ideas, and then at least my vision is that when we fly out here tomorrow, when we leave tomorrow, we are all speaking the same language as we go to implement in terms of how drones can be of utility to our different communities wherever we come from. Thank you very much. Please have a nice lunch. Bon appetit. Thank you.